Good evening from Southwest College here in Northern Ireland. My name is Dr. Barry McCarran, Acting Head of Business Development in Southwest College. And
I'm Siobhan Ferguson, and I'm Industrial Development Associate in Sustainable Construction, also with Southwest College.
Brilliant. So today we're really going to present to you our new Erne Campus, which is at the moment, we believe, the largest passive house premium building in the world, and we're very proud of it. The topic of this discussion will be focused on the initial post-occupancy data that we have on indoor air quality in particular. So first of all, to really give an overview and a context to our journey in Southwest College and how we got into the whole area of building some of our estate buildings to the passive house standard. I'll take you back to 2015, and that was when we here in Northern Ireland had a European Union funded project called CREST, and we were the lead partner on that project, which meant that we had a capital budget to build a new building as part of that overall project. And that building, we wanted to do best practice at the time, back in 2015. And our research led us to the passive house standard. So we embarked upon the journey at that point, and we built this building that you can see in the slide to the passive house standard. It was a SIP panel constructed building, and I previously presented data on this building before at previous conferences. So from that, we also then got involved with the Passive House Institute and became, I suppose, a centre of excellence for the region, delivering training, and that was really from 2016 onwards. We've probably quite modest numbers in comparison to the US and North America. However, in our region, these numbers are still quite significant. So we're between 300 and 400 designers and tradespersons at the moment. And we've been significantly involved in 4 passive house projects to date as well in a research capacity. So we've really built up our expertise since beginning the journey back in 2015. And really, as well, this experience of building this building and the years after with the positive benefits, it really all culminated in us feeding into the business plan for our new campus, which of course is the Erne Campus. So first of all, to really provide further context, I have to speak to you about our existing building in the town of Enniskillen that we've now decanted. So this building here was our old campus, and it was 50 years old at the time we decanted. It was built back in 1971. It's a D-rated building based on our construction metrics here. It was coming in at 152 kilowatt hours per meter squared per year just for the heating alone. Remember, everybody here will probably know that passive house comes in at 15 kilowatt hours, so that's quite a contrast. And because we knew we would be decanting the building, and we knew we would be building our new campus to the passive house standard, I began to liaise with the caretaker and the estates team to sort of get a handle on how much heating oil we were using for heating this building. And that came in at on average, 100,000 litres of oil a year. Sometimes it was a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, over the last 3 years of that building. And that was at the time costing us £51,000 a year. I did a calculation in particular for this presentation, and that running cost would now be projected to be £96,000 sterling a year to run with the increase in fossil fuel prices recently. So the overview or the brief that was given to the architects on this project was really to redevelop the old hospital site in the town of Enniskillen, also famous for previously hosting the G8 as it was at the time. And with that, work commenced back in 2016 with clearing away the site and conducting some trial holes because it was an old hospital. There was a lot of preparatory work needed. The brief was, however, to achieve a world-class building for our students and to set us up in a way that we would be future-proofed for the years ahead. So we went after Passive House Premium and also combined that with the UK BREEAM Outstanding Standard as well. So this is it. So the predicted performance, just because I gave you already the data for our existing campus, I want to share with you the predicted performance for the Erne Campus. So as I said, back in 2018, our old campus was using 100,000 litres of oil, costing 51, and again today, I'm saying to you that would be 96,000. But if we take the PHPP that was done for the building, the Erne Campus was coming in when it was certified at 8.4 kilowatt hours per metre squared. And if we take a price, a rudimentary price, say for electricity at the moment, just the exercise, then that means that we're going to have a projected heating cost of about 14,000, just short of £15,000. So that represents an annual saving of £81,000 or an 84% saving year on year for the college. And if we do a typical extrapolation, just again to sort of reflect the business case, then you're looking at £2 million sterling in savings over 25 years, which is quite significant with respect to the college's running costs. So the next couple of slides, I just want to help gain momentum with the presentation and talk about each of the 5 principles as we like to talk about it, but through the lens of the Erne Campus. So the first principle, as we all know, is the building envelope. So for our building here, we had the following U values. So you're talking a U value of 0.25 for the floor, for the wall, which was a timber frame makeup, you're talking 0.13, and for our roof, we were at a U value of 0.15. So a really good building fabric and much better than the Northern Ireland building regulations as well. So this was over and above the standards that we have here at the moment. And you'll also see in the slide here the different proportionate areas of the building fabric. And the one that's missing, which I'll pick up in a wee moment, is the front wall, which is almost exclusively curtain wall glazing. So the second principle that we like to talk through then is really the thermal bridging. So with the thermal bridging, there's quite a significant amount of that in this building, and this was all very new in our own region here in terms of what was required for the architect, what was required for the design team around this, and also having spoken to the people on site, this was also new learning for them with respect to execution on site as well. So, some simple examples here was the steel frame. So the steel frame had to be thermally separated at the junctions between inside and outside, and with that they had a thermal break material in between those steel members. And again, this was new for the design team and new for the team on site. They hadn't done this type of thing before. Also significant was considerations around the sequencing of things on site with respect to the various construction details and maybe putting insulation in place before maybe some other work was done, in particular pouring of concrete. And then when it comes to the modelling of it, really good results because there was such a lead-in time with this project and it was of such significance both to the region and to the college. We had a very good team in place. So all the site, the worst site value that was that came out on the Erne Campus was at 0.07, which of course isn't that great, but that was the worst that we had. And then just to give you, for those who are uninitiated in this space, there was over 4.5 kilometres of thermal bridging in this building. So for those who maybe say thermal bridging isn't a thing, imagine 4.5 kilometres of thermal bridging that would have been left unassessed or not mitigated against. It could certainly have led to a significant amount of heat loss. Then looking at the third principle, which is our window glazing, you can see here in the energy balance graph, our losses and our gains. You'll see in the yellow section of the losses column that we had 22.3 kilowatt hours of losses through the windows, but yet on the gain side, we had 25.7 kilowatt hours of gain. So we have a net increase there of about 3 kilowatts, all things said. So that's quite interesting. And a nice way to maybe frame that is that over the course of the year, our windows, instead of losing heat and being a significant draw on the building, they're actually, providing heat as it were over the course of the year. So you can see the individual metrics there of our glazing, our curtain wall system, which has now actually become certified as a curtain walling system, and the company is actually from Northern Ireland as well. So significant export opportunities for them now with their passive house component. But also looking at the other graph in the picture, the one with the bar chart, we can see as well the significant proportion sizes, be it on each orientation of the building. So you can see there that our south side facing glazing, which is the front of the building, is taking in the greatest proportion of that heat, along with the west side as well. And thankfully, the north is quite small, as we know, in terms of best practice design. Then our air tightness and the last principle, the mechanical ventilation, go hand in hand. So our air tightness was executed on site through tapes and membranes. As I said earlier, it's a timber frame makeup. It was not a closed frame off site. It was built on site, open frame, and with that, this is where the tapes and membranes were executed. Now the target for the building wasn't 0.6 on this project. It actually was 0.3. There was an effort or a recognition to go after a better level of air tightness because of the size of the building. Having a large volume is actually an opportunity to go for a lower level of air tightness, and that is what we did. So the target was 0.3, and the overall result came in at 0.36, which can be rounded up to 0.4. Then moving on to our ventilation system, this is the overall schematic of the system employed at the Erne Campus. It really is a ventilation strategy that can be best described as mixed mode. It employs both mechanical and natural ventilation systems. And if you want to follow me on this, we'll start off on the left-hand side of the screen, and you can see that we have a subsoil heat exchanger here. In the next slides, I'll show some slides on those. Maybe if you can follow my mouse, you'll see where I am here now. So this is the subsoil heat exchanger, and I'll talk about that in a second. Then once the air is heated or cooled, depending on the time of the year, our air then enters a big air handling box. And then from that, we've got a centralized and a decentralized mechanical ventilation systems employed inside. So most of the centralized systems are delivering air to the large rooms like the theatres and the student theatres, and then also to significant rooms in the building, particularly in the central atrium. And then the remaining part of the strategy is individual room on room ventilation, where there's direct intake and exhaust on a room by room basis. So we have almost 40 of those decentralized systems, largely on the top floor of the building, where they can be terminated up at the roof, both the intake and the exhaust. And then the last part of the strategy involves the atrium. which is seen very much as an area to purge, ventilate the building. So some of the air from various parts of the building is exhausted into this space, and then with, I suppose, a passive stack element, depending on automatic windows opening and other metrics, we can have that flush of purging the building if needed. This also works for night cooling as well, which is a significant part of the strategy at the Erne Campus. So hopefully there'll be a few questions about that in the Q&A afterwards. Here is some more detail on the subsoil heat exchanger. It's over 1 kilometre in length. So the whole idea here is quite eloquent. In our winter time here, that we're able to preheat the air. So the average temperature in this part of the world is maybe, it's quite temperate actually. So you're talking about 2-3 degrees in the winter time. And with these earth tubes, we'll be able to preheat that air before it enters the building up to maybe around 10 degrees, which is quite good. And then in the summertime, we're able to then, maybe in the peak of the summer, we might be up around the mid-20s, and we're able to then, get rid of some of that heat before the air comes in. So it'll cool the air maybe back down to maybe 17, 16 degrees, something like this as well. So it's an eloquent solution, and it's 1 kilometre of thermal bridging or earth tubes underneath the ground. Then moving on to our heating system, it's a bio-oil micro CHP unit that is delivering most of the hot water demand, in fact 100% of the hot water demand, and 80% of the space heating comes from this as well. And then we've got an air to water heat pump which delivers 20%, the remaining 20% of the space heating through underfloor sections, and that's mostly stationed in the atrium space as well. The rest of the heat emission is through low water content radiators stationed throughout the building actually. So that's the heating system for the building. So then I suppose it's not lost on us that we said at the start the building is Passive House Premium. So with that, you can see from this photograph, it's also a nice photograph to take in the relationship between the building and the town and the waterway as well. So it's quite a nice photograph as well. But what I'm trying to show you here by including this photograph is really the significant amount of micro generation we have on the roof through solar photovoltaic panels. So let's look at the detail of that. So on site, the roof has nearly 3,400 meters squared of PV. That's equivalent to 14 tennis courts, and it's a 520 kilowatt P system, and that just gives us the generation figure, which of course some of you will know from PHBP, the golden figure of 120 kilowatt hours per meter squared of floor area for the year. So that is how we're getting to Passive House Premium. Then of course everybody knows with micro generation we've got these swings in terms of the highs and the lows and stuff throughout the year. So the first thing we have as a wraparound for that is we have a battery storage system on site as well. So this is a 460 kilowatt hour system or a 180 kilowatt peak lithium battery storage. So that allows for some short-term storage whenever we have significant highs, and the building can draw off the battery storage intermittently. It is envisaged that as time goes on, we will have electric vehicle charging points. We also have an old workhouse on site, which is part of another funding project, which is due to be opened this summer. And with that, it'll also be able to take a significant amount of the generation as well at peak times. So overall, the site as it matures will have a better and better situation with respect to renewable energy as well. Now, I suppose the key focus of the presentation was really for us to deliver our initial data on indoor air quality, and that's Siobhan's been working on that with myself here. we'll go through some of our early data on this. But first of all, I suppose to set the scene, I've included these two graphs or on indoor air quality. It was my own research area for my PhD was in the area of indoor air quality through the contaminant radon, and monitoring 100 certified passive houses to see if radon was better or worse. Thankfully, the research proved that passive houses resulted in a 50% reduction in comparison to non-certified passive house buildings here in Ireland and the UK. So that was very positive. But now that we have a new building in the form of the Erne Campus, we've been really looking at that data. And another stimulant for that has been obviously the pandemic and the importance of good indoor air quality in the times we find ourselves in. So the first thing to show you is really this chart here above the World Health Organization logo. So this outlines the categories of indoor air according to EN 13779, which is the international standard of classification for indoor air. So we can see that indoor air 1 or standard 1, which is high indoor air quality, and that's really measured or recognized by the metric being below 400 CO2 parts per million. And in order to achieve that, you would need to be delivering about 54 cubes of outdoor air per person in the building, or per hour per person. Then if we look at the second one for medium indoor air quality, we are somewhere between 400 and 600 CO2 parts per million. And in order to achieve that, you need to be delivering something in the region of 36 to 54 cubes per hour per person. And then the third one, which is of interest, is actually between 600 and 1,000 CO2. And in order to deliver that, you need to be between 22 and 36. And of course, for those in the room who know, the Passive House Standard recommend that we use 30 cubes per hour per person. So this is the one that we're aiming for. Some might be wondering, well, why are you not going for a better one? The reason for that would be that this amount of air delivery would be too much air being delivered into a space, and it might we might find that it's uncomfortably dry in an environment like that. And another note when we're just looking at this is that unfortunately now, for those of us who are up to date on our climate change science, the outdoor air globally is just sitting just over 400. So we now no longer have this classification of indoor air unless we manufacture it. So then taking us across to the other graph, the one that looks a little bit like a fried egg, we have here on one side the relative humidities, and they're ranging from 100% at the top to 0 at the bottom. And if we look across the graph, we can see that the comfortable zone is from about 35% relative humidity up to 70% relative humidity. So what I'm trying to draw your attention to is the sweet spot in relative humidity is between 35 and 70. And then on temperature, it's between 18 and 25 is the comfortable area. So right bang in the middle is, I suppose, the design temperature of 21 degrees with a relative humidity of, let's say, 50%, 55% relative humidity. That's perfect. We will have noticed in I suppose, many of the people on the call are from different parts of the world, but here in Ireland and the UK, our COVID problems over the last 2 years have been in the winter period. And that's usually because we've got lower temperatures with lower relative humidity. And that's a breeding ground or an environment in which things thrive. In the summer months, we're much more into this comfortable space largely as well with our buildings. So I think that's just to provide a context for the data we're about to present. So the first one to really look at is the overheating. I always like including this. Passive House is the only standard in this part of the world that incorporates an overheating assessment. So for the Erne Campus, the PHBP assessed the overheating to be at 2.6%. That's below the best practice figure of 5%, and indeed some other people say 3%. So quite happy with it being at 2.6%. So that means that the Erne Campus can't really go over 25 degrees C predicted for more than 228 hours of the year. So you can see the graph that we pulled off the PHBP there, and the difficult period might be around the end of July, start of August, which is really the peak months for temperature here in Ireland and the UK. So now I'll hand over to Siobhan. She's going to do some presenting on the actual data, as she's been responsible for working on this and preparing the graphs. So I'll hand over to Siobhan.
Thanks, Barry. Yeah, the building was handed over to Southwest College in September, and then the data has been collected from October 2021 up until now. So the data shown now is to March 2022. So as you can see on this graph here, the blue line, it indicates the average indoor area or temperature for that time period. So you can see that that actually has been excellent and is showing a very even profile across between the 20 and 25 degrees Celsius. So then below in the orange line, you can see the average outdoor temperature for that same time period. So then in the white box, that's showing the average per month for the temperatures for each of the months. So they're ranging to around the 21, 22 mark. So that actually has become very, very encouraging. So this would be in line with the PHPP that was set out for the college. So then if we move on to the CO2 levels that has been collected for the campus. So along with the graph, you can see sort of the rise and fall of the weekends. It's falling down in the weekends. Then with the holiday periods for midterm, for the Christmas break, and then midterm again. So this is very, very encouraging, this CO2 data as well. For the average CO2 levels for October was 476. November was 487, December was 463, January was 485, February was 486, and then March has slightly crept up with 503 parts per million. So this is very, very encouraging for our college, and we are really happy with this to date.
Mm-hmm. So in addition to that, you can see if you think back to the slide I showed you, showing the indoor air quality classifications, ours is really, really good at the moment, and we're not delivering any more than 30 cubes per hour. One of the things that we might expect to see over with the lifting of restrictions is maybe we're not up at full staff and student occupancy just yet. So maybe, as Siobhan outlined there, March 22 was the first time we crossed 500, which is still a really, really low figure. So we've still got a bit of capacity there to maintain good indoor air quality. I'd expect maybe over a period of time, it might be between 500 and 600. So that's really good. So that's a focus on indoor air quality. And again, I really hope that we get some good questions on that in the Q&A after this. But moving on then, I suppose one that everybody wants to know about, and we've no problem sharing with you, is the costs. How is this building cost, and what does it come in against, with other buildings, particularly here in Ireland and the UK. So the overall project is the final figures not just settled yet, but we're talking just over £29 million. And with that, when we do the proper metric on that, you're talking about £3,500 per metre squared of floor area. And I've been involved with some, presenting this to different government organisations and also many relevant contractors in this space. And that figure of 3,500 for a building of this stature is quite good, I'm told. A lot of the education buildings delivered and built in London now would be creeping over the £4,000 per metre squared. So to get a building that is the world's largest passive house premium building for a figure like that is something that I think is a positive story as well. It also came in on time and on budget. I suppose the asterisk with the on time was the COVID intervention. So there was an extension of time with that, but nothing that was over and above the extension of time. And then for us, what has this meant for the college? What has this building been a catalyst for? My own department in the college is the R&D arm of the college. So, you know, for us, it has meant a lot. Our intake now is nearly £3 million a year on year. And in particular, our expertise in the area of sustainable construction, which Siobhan works on, as well as myself, has meant that we've had over 70 R&D projects now, resulting in over £1 million in R&D since opening the Crest Centre in 2015. So steady growth as a result of having buildings of this profile. Then another thing that we're very proud of was that we have the designation now from the UN to become one of their high performance buildings centres of excellence. We signed the MOU back in November at COP26, and that means that we're now part of the network. There's many partners there in North America as well, so, and we're working with them on a number of ongoing projects currently as well. So exciting times for us on our international portfolio as well. And then keeping that theme going, one thing we'd like to draw your attention to is the very last week of September coming is our international passive house boot camp, we're calling it now. I was going to say summer school, but it is our boot camp. We've settled on the name, and that's a collaboration with the International Passive House Association. So we're really hoping to meet many of you in person. I think Siobhan's going to be in Boston at the conference. Unfortunately, I won't make it. I'll be in Canada later on in July, but hopefully we'll be able to, you know, share a Guinness with you back in Enniskillen come November, and you'll be able to see this building in person. So we look forward to that. And I suppose just to really round out on what the building has meant for everyone is really that internally, and this is one of the pleasant surprises of this building, is that we implemented a year before we took over the project or took on took handover of the building. We initiated a One Planet Living initiative in the college, and with that adoption, we found that lots of different schools in the college, like our hair and beauty, our catering, have all really, you know, embraced sustainability measures, and we have lots of really good stuff going on, and really our building has been the catalyst for that. And, you know, considering where we're at with climate change and the latest reports from the IPCC, this really is the very positive story for us in the college, and something that we are looking to build on going forward towards reaching our target of being a net zero college by 2030. So hopefully that also is intriguing for some other organizations that are at the conference here as well. And then really just a concluding piece is having the bravery, I suppose, you know, in the college, and you know, getting support from the different organizations that funded this project. It's meant that it has been a very significant building for the region. I would say in some ways it's broken a glass ceiling. We've had lots of other stakeholders come to us now and ask, how did you do that? How have you found it? We're looking to do the same now, and because we've done it, they can't really do less than that in some respects. So very positive for the region. The Passive House Premium thing is also a great example of where, you know, energy efficiency should always be the first renewable. So rather than putting renewables on in a fashion before you have your energy efficiency, this really is an exemplar of best practice when it comes to renewable energy as well. And the third wee snippet here for us is really around the Passive House standard being quite new in the UK, and this is another high-profile project that just adds more momentum to the growth of the standard across the rest of the region, wider than Northern Ireland. And for us, then we've been delivering the training. So it's needless to say, the demand for training is going up and up, and that's very good for us in terms of our business. And again, number 5 is really, here we are, myself and Siobhan, presenting to a conference in North America, and that in itself is a great story in itself. So that's really, in conclusion, there is a lot of benefits to go into this standard, as well as just the energy performance and the indoor air quality of the building. There's lots of other intangibles. So that's us. That's it from me and Siobhan. So a big thank you from everyone, and look forward to the questions and answers after this. We'll just leave you some photographs of the building from some different angles, and we hope to see you at our summer school later on at the end of September. Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. We thank you so much for watching this presentation. My name's Gabby Brainerd. I'm a trainer with PHN, and I'm here with Barry McCarran and Siobhan Ferguson live. So we have a Q&A here at the end. I'm going to take some questions from the chat and present them to our panelists. I'd like to start. There were a couple questions from Craig and others about the data collection system. So I think there's interest in sort of what sorts of sensors, is it continuous monitoring, et cetera? What parameters are you measuring? So I wonder if Barry and Siobhan, you can start by just telling us a little bit more about your data collection. And both of you are on mute right now.
Yeah, so I'm happy to give an overview on that, and Siobhan can give a wee bit of detail on how she pulls that data down. So we have a centralized BMS system for the building, so that's building management system in case it's a different name across the water. But every room in the building has, individual room by room monitoring of the indoor air quality, and that's all coming back centrally to a data point. We're still working through the defects liability period of the project, and at the moment we've been manually having to pull down that data, but going forward through systems like Power BI and everything, we'll have centralized dashboards with real-time data. But at the moment, in this initial couple of months from opening the building, we've been pulling that down individually, line by line. So Siobhan, you've had first-hand experience of doing that. I don't know if you want to add anything to what I've said there.
Yeah, well, I just will go and take, there's like 225 Excel sheets that I will download and then go through them. They're taking every error, so then I'll just have to go through it, and there's a lot of work, taking a lot of time to go through it. So I'm hoping that it will end up an easier way than this.
Yeah, that does sound like a lot of work. And at the moment, you're just measuring temperature and CO2, is that right?
Yeah.
Is there any future plans to measure other parameters or?
Yeah, so going forward, we would have a strategy to sort of bring in our other strengths. Things that we intend to look at will be relative humidity as well, because within the campus itself, we have the cookery school, there's a gymnasium, and there's other moisture content areas.
Hairdressing.
Yeah, hairdressing that's what it was. So with those three, it's worth monitoring relative humidity across the whole of the building. And we've only really, I suppose the data we presented so far is for the winter period here with us. So it'd be interesting to get the seasonality between summer and winter as well going forward. So I suppose that answers that to a degree.
So one question about sort of how you've used this data already. So have you been able to use the success from this project to create some campus-wide performance standards or metrics for other buildings on campus?
Yeah.
Or other buildings in your college?
Yes, that's a really good question. So in Southwest College, we're really lucky in that this is now our second certified passive house building. Our first one was built back in 2015, and it really has informed our estates department. And going forward with our existing campuses, we are looking actively at what we
Yeah. Okay, Siobhan, I think we may have lost Barry's connection for the minute.
Yeah.
Let me just check out a couple other questions from the chat. One thing I actually wanted to ask about in terms of the mechanical system layout for the building, Barry mentioned that you had like some rooms that were decentralized and some that were centralized. So with the decentralized rooms, did that mean you had individual heat recovery units for individual rooms, or what sort of system were you using for those, for the
Yes, there's
decentralized?
individual within certain rooms. So that's the way I think there's maybe, they're more up along the top of the building than the
Mhm.
bottom, because they're set singly up as sort of more at the top end of the building than the lower part.
And the thinking behind that was that you could have more individualized control of those rooms, or just curious about the design.
Yeah, I think that was the main part of the design.
Interesting.
And then a lot of the lower building there's no back wall. So there's access then for the extract and that for the other ones for,
Oh.
the top end of the building, because it's going out onto the car park.
Got it.
The other
Got it.
ones
So
would be built
so you had
into-
limited access in terms of the air intake and exhaust for the ground floor, because it was embedded in the
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a number of good notes in the chat about some of these kind of smart building technologies and systems and standards that are kind of used elsewhere in the industry. One question I had, and this is a question from Jesse, about the air quality reference level. So I know that you had the chart that said the average CO2 was like between 400 and 500 ppm, which is really great.
Yeah.
He's asking, was that air quality level reference applicable across all building uses? And then I also had a question about, I noticed there were some spikes as well in the data. So I'm sort of curious, like what those were, if that was evening or if there were particular times of day when you saw those spikes.
Well, for the averages, they would have been all added together. For the averages, throughout for each room, and that was all done for the averages. Then there would have been spikes in some of the room. They would have been more the kitchen areas.
Okay.
So the spikes would have been them kitchen areas. That's where they would have been more towards.
Have you looked at maybe disaggregating the data and digging into some of those rooms or times?
Yeah, we're hoping to sort of look into that as well. But we've noticed that any of them rooms, like the kitchens and that, once that would spike up, it'll drop within a couple of hours. It will be back down within definitely under 1,000.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it doesn't last long. There's no worry about that it's staying high. It is constantly just dropping nearly straight away.
Yeah, it seems very well ventilated.
Mm-hmm.
And just in case I may have missed this, but what is the mix of uses in the building? It's primarily classrooms, but you have some special spaces.
Yeah, Siobhan, do you want me to do that?
I go on here.
No bother. So yeah, the building is primarily, I would say, 70% of it's general classroom, typical education building, offices, staff working spaces, and then the remaining 30% is in those specialized vocational areas. So we're really like a further education college rather than a university. So we have a lot of those sort of industries in the building, with the education. So as outlined before, those specialist areas would make up the rest of the building. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like those have some unique kind of high humidity conditions or unique occupancy situations.
Yeah, it's a very interesting building from that perspective. I suppose before I get cut off there, to continue answering that question, it is, you know, as we go forward, we want to sort of, you know, we have all this data and we will sort of get more sophisticated with our monitoring as we go, you know. So at the moment, it's just a top level headline. And then going forward, we want to get more specialized with what we have, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And are you able to use the results to feed back to like building commissioning or understanding how the ERVs and other ventilation systems are working?
Yeah, a really good question. So that's another thing that's ongoing. We are working with the estates team, feeding back the data that's helping inform, you know, this period of defects liability, to feed back into the contractor what needs fixed and stuff. So it's been very valuable to have people within the college who are familiar with passive house and indoor air quality generally. So yeah, it's been very, very good. I think as well, we're looking forward. Well, myself and Siobhan are really looking forward to, because the building's really going to get stress tested, because we've got a lot of southern glazing, as you can see here where my hand is, you know, and this atrium. It'll be very interesting to see how the building performs over the summer months coming as well.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So just to pick up on your comment about kind of the occupants and commissioning, can you talk about how you educated both the building occupants and facilities management into the systems, the passive house systems, and also your PMS system and the data that you're getting?
Yeah, so I can take you back to the construction phase. So pre-tender, before we even went out, us ourselves, Southwest College, deliver the passive house designers course and the passive house tradespersons course. So we actually would have had people pre-contract come to us for training to get, you know, into a position where they could tender for the project, and that included the team that then got the project. And then after the contract was signed, we were fortunate enough to have the Passive House Academy here as well on the island of Ireland. So with us being the client, we couldn't really be training the team. So at that stage, there was bespoke training sessions all the way through from the Passive House Academy on air tightness and various things. And then when we got to the stage of completion and certification, there was then Mossart were the certifiers for the building as well. So they would have been involved in that initial period. And then since that period has elapsed, we're now in a phase where everybody's really contributing to it in the team setting. But the story has been very positive. A lot when it comes to the indoor air quality and the mechanical systems. With that regard, everything's been working really well. The heating the heating systems have probably had more issues than the ventilation aspects, you know. Mm-hmm.
Was there any special training for just the occupants and the users of the building?
Well, yeah, our estates team, of course, yeah. So they're dealing with it. In terms of the occupants, they've no control really as such, other than opening windows, which of course is allowed, you know. But no, generally, I suppose to give a comment on the occupants of the building, there has been a phenomenon where the people in the building have you know, they've gone from a very, very cold, leaky, uncomfortable building to a building that is quite, you know, as we all know in this community, really, really well ventilated, really, really high comfort levels. So there has been that sort of period of adjustment, just getting used to that level of comfort.
Hopefully that's a positive adjustment.
I made it in a positive way. Yeah.
Question about radon. So I know this is part of Barry's expertise, but from Jesse, you mentioned passive house buildings are generally less risky for radon. Are there any thoughts on some of the unique challenges to minimizing radon or other specific contaminant exposure risk in passive house?
Yeah, so again, 4 years of my life was dedicated to that space, so I'm more than happy to talk about it now that it's all over. So yeah, passive houses generally, I suppose if I take it from the top level, if you can imagine an airtight building, in the first instance, that fabric is resistant to letting contaminants in. Then secondly, the building's constantly ventilating itself with a really high air exchange rate. So if anything were to get in, it's getting straight away flushed out. So I suppose just once you go beyond that, when it comes to radon, one of the things from having done the PhD and everything that you'll understand now from my point of view is that any building that has masonry or any cementitious materials will have a certain level of radon in it at all times. The real secret to it is making sure that it's at really low levels. And my study of 100 passive houses that are certified sort of proved that you're talking at least a 50-60% reduction in radon here in Ireland and the UK, in contrast to existing buildings that are not passive house certified. So I'd be quite confident that as you go across the different jurisdictions in the world where radon is maybe an issue or not, that you would find the same results. I'm again open call here. I'd be looking to partner up with people maybe in the US and Canada to look at that, particularly, you know, to just take the model and the methodology and monitor buildings in the US and Canada to see, do we get that same phenomenon? But I'd be very confident in the outcome of that. Another observation from the studies would be timber buildings would also have a slightly lower radon level as well.
Interesting. Are there any special like detailing considerations for, you know, like considering moving radon from subsoil through, you know, the airtight envelope?
No, there's nothing in particular. Here in Ireland, we have in our building regulations, if you're in a high risk area, a thing called, you know, we refer to as a radon barrier that's usually at subfloor level. Now that a lot of people here think, oh, you've got a radon barrier installed, that's it, there's no problem. But loads of houses that have a radon barrier present with radon levels, and some with high radon levels. But there's no care and attention really with that radon barrier. It's quite a crude instrument, but what you're seeing from passive house and passive house airtightness detailing is once that care and attention is in the mix with the construction team, you do get this higher level of quality, and with that you know you're keeping contaminants out, as I said at the start. Yeah. That's
interesting. Just follow up on that, related to some of the specific kind of trades and spaces in your building, are there any indoor air quality contaminants that are maybe being generated by some of the building uses that need special attention?
Yeah, we intend to look at the kitchen space to see what's going on there. I'd expect that you get elevated CO2 levels at points. One interesting thing about the Erne Campus as well that I haven't said is that within the cookery school, everything has moved from gas to induction. In terms of the pots and pans and everything. Normally it would be gas, and now we're at a full electric with induction. So with that regard, that would eliminate a fair amount of contamination. But we still want to study that space, particularly to see what might happen with it.
Yeah, there's actually a couple panels related to induction cooking I think later today. So if anyone's interested, yeah, there's a chef who's going to be presenting on it. So that could be an interesting future topic for a future Passive House conference. Great. Well, I think do you guys have any final thoughts? We're kind of nearing with our last couple minutes, and also if there's anyone in the audience, any more questions you want to get in, now's your chance.
There is some shameless self-promotion or group promotion, I suppose. The International Passive House Association, which we're all affiliates from, the Passive House Association of Ireland and Southwest College are hosting this boot camp this year because there's no conference this year. So we just encourage you, our North American partners, to come over and sample Guinness and, you know, enjoy our program of Passive House events that we're going to have lined up for you, and tours as well. That's at the end of September, and the people from the Institute have already sent out some of the papers on that. So for everyone on the call that's hearing this, you know, be sure to look into that, and if you can make it, we'll welcome you with open arms.
Thanks. That sounds really cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think with that, we'll maybe start to wrap up. Thanks to both of you. This is a really impressive project. It's a beautiful building, and I think it's so great that you've got this monitoring infrastructure in place. And it seems like you're just at the beginning of figuring out what to do with the data. And I think it's going to be super helpful in making sure that the building continues to be functioning well and, far into the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thanks to both of you. And with that, I guess we will wrap up.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Take
Yeah,
care.
brilliant.